bear witness. Thank you for letting us be ourselves.
Chuck D, all right here for Real News Network, also on the Real, off the record, right here with the legendary DMC, Mr. Dow McDaniels, Hip Hop Hall of Famer always, recently inducted Rock and Roll Hall of Famer. Now, I want to also say, I'm doing a lecture somewhere in the middle of the country, not too far from Cleveland, but I tried to schedule it, and I would walk there to see. But I'm going to be at one of the celebrations throughout the year, but that's going to be a great time.
Well, we're just making room for your walk down the carpet to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Y'all better be next, too.
Well, I sent Run congratulations, and he hit me right back, and he said, y'all next. I'm like, no, there'll be some between. But really, it's time to celebrate the now and I think the fact that you was inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which is big for all of us. It was bigger than the Notorious movie for me, and for all of the genre. It's all relative altogether. And of course, I on the enemy board which is the on the real off the record board. In this case, I had people say, well, what kind of questions that you want to ask Mr. Dow McDaniels? And we even start with Jesse right there behind the camera, and he had a question that he wanted to ask. We can hear you. Go ahead.
I want to know why people aren't explaining violence anymore. A lot of MCs in particular talk a lot about violence but don't give an explanation for it, why it's around.
Well, personally, this is my take on it. A lot of MCs is making money off of talking about violence, and they know it, because if you tell them to do otherwise, they'll say, oh, if you criticize them. I hear a lot of rappers go, man, they don't say nothing to Bruce Springsteen and Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I go, man, that's the dumbest thing you could ever say, because if you want to give me that excuse, this is what I tell them: stop rapping and go be an actor.
Right. And
then they look at me like, no, if that's your excuse, because this is totally different. My thing is that Ice-T told me this. He said, yo, D, we'll make a lot of money quickly. Sex and violence, it sells.
Especially in America.
It sells. Why are they going to explain it to you when they're getting a paycheck? Because that same rapper, he knows, okay, I make this violent record, but the minute I make the non-violent record, I'm over. But that's what he's thinking. See, we didn't think that. We made the non-violent record or the positive record, and we put it on. So for them, they done did it so much without explaining it. You know what I'm saying? Okay, it's like this. Here's a good example. I was going to say this earlier. One thing about hip-hop was this. Even if we talked about violence, or even if the rapper talked about being a stick-up kid, or even a drug dealer, or even Run DMC saying what we said, or Chucky saying what you said, this is what's really missing from the picture. A lot of kids who are of the younger generation, I'll go on the radio old school at noon, and I'll just say what we just been talking about all day, and this kid looked at me. He was an intern there, probably was like 18 years old, 17 years old, and he kept looking at me when I was speaking. So when the hour was up, this was in Philly on Power 99, he looks at me and says, DMC, I wish I was alive during the old school era. Wow. And I said, why are you saying that, man? Because he said, yo, there was so much there for me. The same thing I said, you look to the right, you had this, you looked there. And I said, so what's the matter with it now? This is to answer your question. He said, it's kind of like when you're looking at your older brother and he's going down in the basement with his boys, and when you turn 16 years old, you started looking at him since you was 12. He coming with his boys and his girlfriend and stuff. But then one day he opens the door and says, come on, little bro, and you go down there and you go, and your brother got his black light on, and your brother's playing the music, and you watching your brother's girlfriend walk around with his t-shirt on. When you come up out of the basement, you don't go blab to the whole world what was going on, because that was ours. He said, yo, most of my friends is talking about violence and money and juggling, and they don't even do it no more. He said, me as a young guy, there's nothing left for me to enjoy. And I was like, wow. But to answer the question is, these guys are only talking about the violence because they're making money off it. Because if we was talking about polka dots and dandelions in the mountains, those same artists would be talking about what? Polka dots and dandelions in the mountains.
Well, with money evaporating and that dollar going down, that will change. And we'll be back.
We care about our audience too.
Well, yeah, we'll be back with a category called Spit Your Mind. It's like quick question, quick answer, as best as possible. Because really, we're coming up in a time where quick answers just won't do it anymore. So we're going to just try to do our best on the Spit Your Mind segment coming up next, all right? On the Real, off the record, the Real News Network.
straight. Back is back.